Exactly 50 years ago, something special started in Bowden, Alberta. Since then, the Alberta Conference Camp meeting has touched many lives. And this year, we'd like to go back to how it all began. With the very first theme we had at Foothills Camp. We invite you to the 2023 Alberta Conference Camp meeting. Come join us to celebrate 50 years of moving by His Spirit.
Well, good morning. Are you alive and well? You slept well? You rested with your eyes closed? Well, it's good to be with you here. You know, I'm a little surprised. We started actually a couple minutes early. Is that correct? As a German, you know, I'm surprised that the Canadians are even earlier than the Germans when it comes to timekeeping here. But that's all right. That's good. And I'm happy to be with you here in Alberta. And hasn't God been good? The weather is wonderful. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It's not raining right now. It's almost perfect, I should say. So thank you, God, for keeping that in mind and for blessing us with the right weather as well. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before I start my presentation. I was born and raised in Germany. I grew up in Germany, and German is my mother tongue. So do you know how to detect a German in the dark? Well, here's the secret. You can detect a German in the dark by the V's and W's. Just listen, and you will find out the V's and the W's are always difficult for a German to pronounce. So bear with me as I speak in a foreign language, in a foreign land, but God is with us, and that's good. As I said, I was born and raised in Germany. I lived in Austria for 18 years. Now, Austria is that country that doesn't have kangaroos, but it does have The Sound of Music, if you're familiar with that movie. And I lived in Austria, and I taught at a tiny little school there, a senior college that we have at Bogenhofen Seminary for 18 years before I came to the United States and work now for the Biblical Research Institute, the BRI, as the abbreviation goes. And I have to tell you, Austria, if you've never been there in Central Europe, Austria has beautiful, I mean just beautiful mountains and lakes, crystal clear lakes, drinking water quality. You can swim in there, you can drink the water, you can just enjoy life. But Canada has some nice mountains and beautiful lakes too. But I have to tell you, when I came here to this camp meeting in Alberta, on this campground, my faith was put to a severe test. And this is the reason why. When I was invited to come here to this beautiful campground in Alberta, people told me, you will enjoy your time here in Alberta, just at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. You will see the mountains. You will enjoy the scenery. And I come here, and I'm here on the campground for 4 consecutive days, and there is no mountain in sight. and all I see is a foggy haze covering the country, and some rolling hills, and some green fields, and some yellow fields. And I think to myself, what is happening here in Canada? What is happening in Alberta? You know, they were talking about the Rocky Mountains, and I don't even see them. I tried, in my imagination, I tried to penetrate the fog, to visualize the beautiful mountains. But my imagination did not work. I still didn't see the mountains. So I decided, yesterday, I'll have to check it out myself. I went in my car and I drove. I drove more than 200 kilometers in the right direction. Now, I know my geography. And from my geography, I know that the Rocky Mountains exist. I heard the people say, the people I trust, there are beautiful mountains around, but I just could not see them. So I drive in the right direction for 200 kilometers and still no mountain in sight. When I was ready to enter the national park, Banff, all of a sudden, out of that foggy haze, suddenly, slightly, the veil was lifted, and I could see some of the Rocky Mountains emerge. And I stand before you today to testify, yes, the Rocky Mountains do exist. And yes, I've seen them with my own eyes, and they are gorgeous, and they are impressive. And I tell you, Lake Louise is simply stunning and very beautiful. So you can feel privileged to live in a country like this, even though you don't see the mountains all the time. And I say, the air quality here in Alberta, in Canada these days, I think there is some room for improvement. Don't you think so? I don't know whether it's the fires, the wildfires, or what it is, but it would be nice if the air could be a little bit more clear. Anyhow, I'm happy to be with you here and to spend the next couple days with you every morning. When I drove to the airport in Munich, Germany, some time ago, I noticed several billboards on the roadside. And as I was looking at these billboards, I saw that they depicted a long, dark, elegant limousine and the faces of some very famous people from show business. And on top of these billboards announcements, you could see the heading saying something like the rich and the famous. It was an invitation to come to Munich to meet some of the richest and some of the most famous people in our society. 2 words, just 2 words, rich and famous. See, these 2 words, rich and famous, are what many people are striving for today. This is the ideal of many people. They want to be rich and they want to be famous. This is what they desire, to become wealthy, to make lots of money, to be rich, and to be famous, to have the attention and to have the admiration of many. The question that I would like to pose to you to ponder this morning with me is this. If there were only 2 words that you wish you would be remembered for at the end of your life, two words that depict what you stand for. Two words that express what is most important for you in your life. Which two words would you choose? Now, there is no right or wrong answer to that question. The two words that a person will choose will not be exactly the same two words for everyone, not even in this room. And I asked this question some time ago to my sons. I have 3 sons. They are grown now. The oldest is 33 years old and 30 years, and the youngest is 25. When they were a little younger, I asked my sons this question. If there are 2 words for which you want to be remembered for at the end of your life, what 2 words would you choose? And it was interesting to listen to what my sons would choose as the 2 words that were important to them. If you want to have a meaningful, if you want to have a good conversation with someone that you're interested in, ask them this question, and you will find out what is important for this person and why this person thinks these 2 items, these 2 words are important for their life. This makes for some good conversations, and I think it can tremendously help to get to know the other person better and to appreciate the other person. Now, I humbly submit to you this morning that being rich and being famous will not satisfy your soul for a long time. It will satisfy you. You know, being rich is nice, and being famous has its advantages. But it will never bring you lasting joy and lasting satisfaction in life. See, the most important things in life, the things that that every human being longs for, that everyone in this room, every human being desires, the things that really count in life cannot be bought with money. Love cannot be bought with money. Hope cannot be bought with money. Trust cannot be bought with money. Friendship cannot be bought with money. Happiness cannot be bought with money. Even health cannot be bought with money. And we've heard a wonderful health presentation just before my presentation. The things that are so foundational to our human flourishing, the things that are so important to us human beings, to having a fulfilled, to having a satisfied life, cannot be bought by money or fame. And so I would like to reflect with you this morning on just 2 aspects, what I think would be wonderful 2 words to reflect my life, and what I think would be 2 wonderful words to reflect all of our lives as Christians, 2 qualities that are worthwhile to emulate and that should reflect and characterize the life of all Christ's children. So are you ready for the first one? Here's my first word that I would choose. The first word that I would choose is faithfulness. Faithfulness. Granted, faithfulness is not as spectacular as money or fame, but it is, I believe, much more essential and far more important to God. See, there is something peculiar about faithfulness. Though you can be a little famous, and you can be a little rich, you cannot be a little faithful. That just doesn't work. Faithfulness has something exclusive to it that demands undivided attention. Either you are faithful 100% or you are unfaithful. If you are faithful 95%, that's pretty high. If you are faithful 95% in your marriage, we wouldn't call you a faithful spouse. We would call you unfaithful, because faithfulness demands 100% total commitment. God wants your full, your complete dedication. So let us be men, let us be women who are faithful in our lives. In the Old Testament, we read the story of Daniel, and you're familiar with the story of Daniel. And Daniel, who was thrown in the lion's den because he was not willing to compromise his faith in God. And when Daniel distinguished himself as a wise and as a good leader for the king, his enemies became envious and looked for ways to accuse him of wrongdoing. And then we read in Daniel chapter 6, verse 4, "But they could not find any ground of accusation or evidence of corruption, inasmuch as he was faithful." That's what the Bible says about Daniel. He was faithful. Friends, may our enemies, if we have some, we might not have enemies. We might have people who are a little difficult to get along with. But may our enemies, if we have some, discover the same quality in our lives. May we be people who are known and respected for our faithfulness in the daily things we do. And like Daniel, may we be people who are faithful to God and to his will. I can testify from my own life today, and from my own experience in my family, that this is true. Being faithful to God brings lasting joy. Being faithful to God brings great satisfaction. I've seen that in the people with whom I grew up in school, in academy. I've seen when they did not pursue a path of faithfulness. They had pleasure in the moment, but down the road, their life was not more happy than my life. So it brings peace of mind to be faithful. Why? Because you know what you're doing is right and is good in God's sight. Being faithful to the spouse that you will marry, being faithful to the spouse that you have married, will protect your marriage, will guard your love for each other, and will be a tremendous blessing, not just for yourself, not just for your children and the children of your children. It will be a blessing to society at large. I'm always fascinated and blessed when I see elderly couples being faithfully united their whole life. We need more good examples like that in society and in the church today. Faithfulness is like gold. It shines. It is precious. It is valuable. But you cannot be faithful without love. Love is the ultimate foundation of all faithfulness. Without love, faithfulness will quickly morph into legalism and mere duty. And eventually, it will deteriorate into fanaticism. Did you know that during Hitler's regime in Nazi Germany during World War II, his elite soldiers, the so-called SS, the Schutzstaffel, the SS, they were the elite soldiers in Hitler's Nazi Germany that were the most fanatical, that were the most rigorous, responsible for genocidal killings and many atrocities during the war. Did you know that every SS soldier in the German army during World War II, and the SS were directly responsible to Hitler himself, that every SS soldier would wear on his belt, that every soldier had to wear, the following statement. On their belt you could read, our honor is loyalty. That was their motto. That was their theme. Our honor is loyalty. Now, this loyalty was a blind faithfulness to the Führer, to Hitler himself. It was nothing but fanaticism with disastrous results. True faithfulness, on the other hand, is motivated and carried by love. And this love for God and the well-being of humankind is coupled with persistence and perseverance. See, a faithful person does not quit easily. A faithful person persists in his or her faithfulness, endures. A faithful person is diligent, is reliable in the work he or she pursues. A faithful person is perseverant. And such people you can trust. Such faithfulness becomes visible in our loyalties, our attention, our love for each other. It shows. And faithfulness shows its beauty in the challenges of life. You know, our life does not always go smoothly. Our life is not always happiness. And those who are a little older and more experienced in life will testify that yes, there are some periods in life that are really tough and difficult to handle. These are the moments where we are challenged. These are the moments where other attractions vie for our attention, lure for our loyalty, for our devotion. This is the very context in which faithfulness grows and shows. God never promised to deliver us from every difficulty. God never promised us to deliver us from every evil in this world. But He promised to be with us in those very challenges and difficulties. See, God did not deliver Daniel from the lion's den. God was with Daniel in the lion's den, right? So God does not promise you that there will always be a smooth sailing, so to speak, but He promises you to be with you wherever you are. You are not alone. And because He is faithful, because God desires us to be faithful, God's love never changes. And the prophet Jeremiah has beautifully captured that in the book Lamentations, which, by the way, is an entire book in the Bible, lamenting the evil and the unfairness of life that we all have to face at one point or another. In the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verse 22 and following, Jeremiah says, the Lord's loving kindness is indeed never cease, and His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Therefore, we will trust in thee. That's what He says. Great is thy faithfulness. And His compassion and His loving kindness never ceases. It's new every morning. And that is my experience in my life, and I can share more of that in the following days as we worship together here during the week. Now that leads me to my second aspect that I would like to submit for your consideration this morning. So are you ready for the second word? The first was faithfulness. The second is kindness. Loving kindness. Loving kindness has a universal language and appeal, I believe. It is understood even by the deaf. It is experienced, it is seen even by the blind. Let me tell you a little story. When my youngest son, Daniel, was still a young child, we lived at Bogenhofen Seminary. Bogenhofen is a tiny little, very international school in Austria, in Central Europe. It's pretty much the center of Europe, if you look at the geographic location. And Bogenhofen has a boarding academy. It has a language department. So if you ever want to learn the beautiful German language as a second language, that's the place to go. It has a theological seminary. It has now a program for education, teaching, BA program there, and they also have an academy. And when we were at Bogenhofen, my family and I was teaching there, I was the dean of the seminary. My son would play with the children of other students and families on campus. And the campus of Bogenhofen, even though it's a small school, maybe at a grand total number of 150 students, it's a very international school. So you have students from like 15 different nations and places around the world. And it gives you a little feeling of the international character of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And as my son Daniel was playing with the children, he played with children who spoke Portuguese, who spoke Russian, who spoke German, who spoke English, who spoke Italian, who spoke French and Spanish, and a lot of other languages as well, Korean. And one of the mothers of the other children, she was a teacher, and she was fluent in several different languages. And so she would gather the children together and was able to communicate with most of the children in different languages in their mother language. And one time they had the group together, the children together, and so she introduced the little children to each other, and at the end of that session, she looked at little Daniel, and she said to Daniel, Daniel, what language do you speak? Daniel, do you speak Portuguese? And little Daniel just shook his head, no. And then she said, Daniel, do you speak French? Little Daniel just shook his head, no. Daniel, do you speak some English? Little Daniel just shook his head, no. Daniel, do you speak some Russian? Little Daniel just shook his head, no. And then the mother wanted to build a bridge to little Daniel and asked him in his mother language, in German, Daniel, do you speak German? Little Daniel just shook his head, said no. Now that kind of confused the mother, and she was a little irritated, and she responded to little Daniel, and she says, oh, now Daniel, what language do you speak? And little Daniel just said, I speak friendly. I speak friendly. You know, there is no language barrier to friendliness. Amen? Yes. A friendly smile, a helping hand, support in times of need, a word of encouragement can go a long ways to make life easier and much more pleasant. May I ask you a question this morning? You don't have to raise your hand, just for you to ponder. When was the last time you extended and showed some form of friendliness, of kindness, of loving kindness to someone else? A simple act of generosity, a simple act of kindness, of help. I have to say, when I came here to Canada just a couple days ago, I was very much impressed by the kindness and the friendliness of the people, even at the airport, at the customs control. You know, sometimes if you go to customs, in some countries, it's a little scary. It's a little scary experience. You know, you never know. Will they accept your passport? Do they have any special questions? Are you welcome in that country? The people here, they were exceptionally kind, exceptionally friendly. Yesterday, when I made my trip to the Rocky Mountains, to Lake Louise, I was at the parking lot, and I stood in front of this parking machine where you have to pay for your parking ticket, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And I just stared at the machine and the description and the words, and I just would not work. And there was this lady, this Canadian lady, and she took the time to help me through to get my ticket for my car. Kindness. I never knew that person before, but it leaves a lasting and positive impression on me for this country. May your country be blessed for the kindness and the loving kindness that you extend to other people who come here to this country. And may our church be a place where this kindness, this loving kindness, is being experienced and extended to other people. Now, it is interesting, through compassion for others, love reaches hearts beyond the borders of religion and ethnicity, beyond wealth and rank, beyond gender and age. It is something that all human beings respond to. Have you ever thought about this? Every human being responds positively to kindness and to loving kindness and friendliness. I think that's because God has wired us, created us in a certain way that makes us receptive to kindness and to extend kindness to others. Now let me share a little story, a true story, about such an experience of kindness where a person has extended that kindness to another person in an undeserved manner. Before I do that, I have a question though. Are any in this room familiar with the book, A Thousand Shall Fall? Can I see the hands of those who have read the book, A Thousand Shall Fall? I'm happy to see several hands. Not many, but several have read the book. Now, this is the book of my family. So the person in that book, A Thousand Shall Fall, is my grandfather, and the oldest boy in that book is my father. And I grew up on the stories of that book, A Thousand Shall Fall. And maybe we can, see the book cover here. That's how it looks. When I made preparations to come here to the camp meeting, I told the people, please send a generous number of copies of A Thousand Shall Fall so that people can get a copy for themselves. Unfortunately, this did not work out. There is only one copy at the ABC. And it's not even at this ABC, it's at the main store, and they still need to get that. That is the bad news. The good news is I talked with a manager at the ABC just around the corner here, and he said if you are interested in getting a copy, they'd be happy to receive orders, and they will grant you a special discount on the book. Now that is good news, I think. And if you have never read the book, A Thousand Shall Fall, you may want to read the book. It's a beautiful book. It's faith encouraging. And the beautiful thing about the book is it's all true stories. As a boy, I was listening to my grandmother telling me these stories. I was literally sitting at her feet. And as she would finish a story, I would say, "Grandma, please tell the story again." I could not get enough of those stories. And you will enjoy those stories. Your children and your grandchildren will enjoy the stories. But I have to warn you, if you've never read the book, do not start reading the book at night, just before you want to go to bed. Not because it's so scary, but once you start reading that book, it is very difficult to put it down again. And you will find yourself reading and continue to read and to read because it's just so fascinating. It's so uplifting. So the story I want to tell you is from my grandfather that you see on the picture here. He served in World War II in the German army. He didn't want to go to the army. He was an ordained Seventh-day Adventist minister. He was drafted, as many other Adventists were drafted into the army, against his will. In World War II, he also served in the German army. At that time, he was still a Roman Catholic. He was not a Seventh-day Adventist at that point. And during World War I, he was a sharpshooter. And he knew if he aimed at a person, he would hit the mark. And when he became a Seventh-day Adventist several years later, that's a fascinating story to tell some other time, how he became a Seventh-day Adventist. He realized that he, for conscientious reasons, could not do that anymore. Aim a gun at another person to kill that person. A person that Jesus loves. A person for whom Jesus has died. A person where Jesus said, "Love your enemies." And he was wondering, how can love and compassion come out of the barrel of a gun? And so he decided that he did not want to be tempted to kill another human being in war, in a situation. And so he ordered, and you can read this story in the book, he ordered to have his pistol that he was required to wear all the time, he ordered to have a wooden pistol. He took his real pistol and threw it away into a lake, and he had someone make a replica of his real pistol. And my father, who was a teenager at that time, told me that at one visit when he came back home, he would ask his father, my grandfather, if he could see that wooden pistol. And my grandfather said, "I will show it to you under the promise that you will never ever say a single word to anyone. Because if they find out that I don't have a real pistol, that I just have a wooden pistol with me, this is a reason to be court-martialed, and you do not want to see that." So my father solemnly promised, and my grandfather took out the wooden pistol and showed it to my father. And my father said it looked like the real thing. It had a trigger. Every detail was just like the real thing, except it was a wooden pistol. Now, did you know that at the beginning of the war, World War II, in the unit that my grandfather served, a unit of 1,000 men, out of the 1,000 men, at the end of the war, only 8 survived the war. All others were killed. And out of the 8, only 3, that's how the Americans show 3, right? The Germans show 3 like this. Only 3 survived the war unharmed, without any wounds. And my grandfather was one of them. And all he wore was a wooden pistol. Now, you can read this story and many other true stories in the book. The story I will tell you now is not found in this book. If you want to read this, go to my recent book that I published, Living for God. It's available at the ABC, and you will find this other story that I will share with you written in this book. There are many other books, many other stories that are not told in the book A Thousand Shall Fall that can be shared with you at another time. So my grandfather, who was an ordained Seventh-day Adventist minister, was drafted into the army, and his unit, it was a pioneering unit, a motorized unit, served at the front lines, and they were drafted in the second part of the war into Russia, many thousand kilometers away from Germany. And as they were advancing, the German troops were advancing, the troops received order from the highest places that every village that the German army conquered, that the troops who were following should carefully screen every single house, every place, to see if there were any people hiding in these places. Because the German army suffered tremendous losses through the partisans, as they were called, people who fought behind the lines and attacked the army, and they suffered heavy losses. And the order was, if you find anyone hiding in the houses, in the village, in the towns that the Germans had conquered, you are ordered to shoot them on the spot without mercy. You have to eliminate them, kill them, take their life. And so my father was in Russia, and his unit was assigned to search through all the houses and all the villages that the German troops had conquered and captured in their advance into Russia. And one day, my grandfather told us he was carefully searching the houses of that particular village. And you know how it is sometimes. You go into a place, and all of a sudden you have this eerie feeling, this strange feeling that you cannot explain, that something somehow is not right. And so he was entering this house, and he had this eerie feeling. He had this feeling something is not all right here in this house. And he carefully went from one room to the next room to the next room, carefully screened everything. And the last room in that little house he entered was just a tiny little room, not much furniture in there. There was a cupboard there, a few things, and there was a bed. And he looked around and he couldn't see anyone. And then he knelt down and he looked under the bed. And as he looked under the bed, he saw a young man hiding under the bed. And the eyes of the young man and his eyes, they met for a split second. You know, sometimes these seconds feel like an eternity. And for a split second, my grandfather knew exactly if he will report this young man, he will be shot on the spot outside of the house, right there. So he looked at the young man. The young man looked at him. My grandfather didn't say a word. He got up and he left the room, and he did not report what he saw. And he went on. A couple weeks later, my grandfather was assigned to patrol a railroad line where the German army would have railroads carrying ammunition and supplies, etc. And because these railroads were frequently attacked, by the partisans and the Cossacks and the Russian soldiers. He was on duty to patrol that railroad section. And he was alone, and he was quite a distance from his troop. And as he was patrolling, all of a sudden, in the distance, he could see a group of Cossacks. Now, the Cossacks were feared by the German soldiers because of their fierceness of fighting, and they were on horses, and he was just on foot. And he knew immediately that he had no chance to escape. No matter how fast he ran, no matter what he would do on their horses, they would quickly be at his place and surround him. And so all he could do is pray, a little prayer. And he said he was ready to finish his life. He thought, this is the end, this is when everything is over. And sure enough, couple moments later, the group of Cossacks on their horses approached him, arrived where he was, and surrounded him. And he said they all pointed their guns at him. And then he looked to the leader of the group. And as he looked to the leader of the group, he recognized the face of that young man that he had seen under the bed. And the leader of the group recognized my grandfather. And he signaled to him, "You have been kind to me. You have spared my life. I will spare your life now." And he ordered the group to leave him alone, and they took off. And that's why my grandfather, could tell the story. His kindness, his undeserved kindness to a person in need, turned out to be a lifesaver for him later on in life. You never know how your acts of kindness will impact other people. You never know how your acts of kindness will help to make this world a little better place. Kindness doesn't cost a penny. Kindness is free. It is available to all. All you have to do is practice it, share it. So may God bless us as we walk in his footsteps. Amen. May we use our talents, may we use our skills, not to impress other people, not to seek earthly riches and wealth and fame, but may we use what God has given to us to be faithful to what God has told us to do, so that we can be a blessing to others, and so that other people, because of the kindness, the loving kindness that we have extended to them, would like to know more about the God we serve so faithfully. Now that is my message, my little message to you this morning, and I hope you will be inspired to be faithful to God and to be kind to each other. And I invite you to be here tomorrow morning again. We'll have another session together. We'll talk about the blessings of having less, which leads to a life of more. And we'll talk a little bit about digital detox. Do you have something like this here? It's called an iPhone or smartphone, whatever brand you have. Now I see most of the people here in this room are advanced in life's experiences. You may want to invite the younger generation. I know they have their own programs, but maybe some of the young people, some of the teenagers would like to listen to what we have to say on digital detox, on how to use these things more responsibly, and how less can be more, and how our lives can be a little bit more analog instead of digital, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so you don't want to miss tomorrow morning, and I look forward to spending time with you tomorrow again. May God bless you and have a wonderful rest of the day. Amen.